Let's cook some wild mushrooms. I've been foraging wild mushrooms here the past couple days, and now I finally have a decent enough stock built up to make a nice meal out of. And you can tell a couple of these, here's a chanterelle. A couple of these are just getting a little, like if I don't cook these tonight, they're not going to be any good. But you can keep wild mushrooms in a paper bag in your fridge for at least 2 or 3 days at the most, and they'll still be edible. But I wouldn't really push it after 2 or 3 days just because they start getting, a little weird. But over here we have a little pile of, I call these distant gilled milk mushrooms, Lactophlus hygrophorides. You can see that they're a very nice orange color. The gills are like a lightish orange, almost like a yellow color, but they're a lot lighter than the cap. The stalk is almost the same color as the cap, maybe a little lighter shade of orange. And let's see, let me get on here. They might have been in the fridge for a little too long for them to leak milk, but these are the ones that I showed in one of my YouTube shorts, where if you damage the gills or the stalk or any part of the mushroom fruiting body itself, it'll start to seep out a little bit of latex milk. But anyway, that's the distant gilled milkies. Here's a nice pile of chanterelles. These are all just regular yellow chanterelles, golden chanterelles, I guess people commonly call them. They have ridges instead of gills. I'm holding my phone backwards from the way I usually do. I keep forgetting where the camera is. But yeah, they have ridges instead of gills. Very nice, vibrant orange color, and they smell like a very fruity, like almost like an apricot almost. But that's not always the case. Sometimes they just smell like a mushroom. So if you're trying to forage chanterelles, I highly recommend looking for all of the characteristics and making an educated determination as to what these are, rather than just going by one factor and thinking that you're safe by saying, oh, okay, well, it's a yellow mushroom, whatever. Yellow chanterelles, Cantarellus cibarius. Here is some black trumpets, a nice little pile of black trumpets. These are pretty easy to identify. There's not a whole lot of mushrooms that look similar to these. And these are actually a really, really good edible wild mushroom. They're really, really prized. Whenever you find these, it's a really nice treat. They have a great scent to them. And one thing I really like about black trumpets is they don't cook down a whole lot whenever you cook them. But I digress. And then over here, these guys are kind of in rough shape. Well, rough looking shape. But here we have some regular milk mushrooms, I call them, or Lactophlus volumus. These are the same exact genus as these guys. Lactophlus volumus right here. Their gills are a lot tighter and a lot more crowded, whereas the Lactophlus hygrophorides, the gills are a lot further spaced than these guys. But almost every other thing about these mushrooms are almost identical. The cap is basically the same exact color. The stalk, same thing, basically about the same exact color. Even the gills, basically the same exact color. They both leak latex milk, and they're both really choice edible mushrooms. These ones, the volumus, they do seem to have a little more milk in them than these guys. So that's why these ones right over here, let me move this back over. That's why these guys here are so like stained brown, because even if you just like touch the gill a little bit and just damage a little part of it, it'll start leaking out latex. It'll start leaking out latex, and the latex, once it dries and becomes oxidized, turns this brownish color. And that's why these look so bizarre right now, just because they were in my refrigerator overnight in a paper bag, and they just leaked milk and oxidized to this color. Yeah, no, these are a really, really good choice edible mushroom. If we're going to cook these, and this is assuming that you have made the proper identification, you've double checked and triple checked, you've made sure that what you are about to consume is the mushroom that you think it is. Okay, I'm going to assume that you take responsibility for any mushrooms you consume. I just had to put that disclaimer there. But once you are ready to cook, the first thing that you have to do is clean these, because these grow outside and they're going to have all kinds of things on them: dirt, bugs, little pieces of debris matter like leaves and stuff like that. It is perfectly safe and it's perfectly acceptable, especially with wild mushrooms. Put your sink on the very lowest setting and then just kind of rub off any dirt that you can see. In all reality, you're not going to get every single speck of dirt off here, okay? If you're foraging wild mushrooms, you are eventually going to eat a little speck of dust or dirt here and there. It just comes with the territory. Try not to think about it too much. Just, okay, it is what it is, right? Not only do you want to make sure that you get any dirt or insects or duff or any debris off of here, you also want to check to make sure that no bugs have infested them. Chanterelles, I'm actually really surprised that all of these chanterelles that I have here on the table are perfect. They're getting a little dry and a little older right now since they've been in my fridge for 3 days, but they're like perfect. 99 times out of 100, right here in Pennsylvania, whenever I do find chanterelles, they are heavily infested with insects. Insects absolutely love chanterelles. I don't know if it's because they're so fragrant or what, but they always get to the mushrooms before I do, typically. Which is why whenever I found these, whenever I was walking in the woods the other day, I was like, holy crap. And then I saw that they were completely bug-free. Like every single one of them is totally bug-free. But whenever you're cleaning them, you want to make sure that they're not heavily infested with beetle larvae or fly larvae or anything. Once again, kind of the same concept with dirt and stuff like that. If you're foraging wild mushrooms, chances are you're going to eat an insect larva here and there. Just another one of those things where don't think about it, just enjoy what your end product is, okay? But you do want to make sure that it's not so heavily infested with beetle larvae and stuff that it just kind of becomes very off-putting, I guess is the best way we can say that. So, yeah, all these, I don't have to worry about any bugs infesting the actual mushrooms themselves. There might be one or two like on the surface crawling around here, but milk mushrooms are generally known to be pretty resistant to insect infestation. So these two I don't have to worry about. These ones, like I said, somehow are perfect. None of these had any bugs in it. I must have got them at the perfect time. And black trumpets, they don't have enough mass for the bugs to actually eat their way through. You can see this is a hollow tube all the way through, and the mushroom flesh itself is very, very thin. So there's not really any potential for bugs to get their way and start infesting these. They'll live in the trumpet shape itself, but they're not going to actually live in the flesh. Okay, so let me go. I'm going to clean these off. These guys right here, I'm just going to stir fry them. And I'll show you how I do that after I get them cleaned, and I'll start doing that. But then these guys over here, we're actually going to roll them in flour, and then we'll pan fry them. So let's do it. I figured I'll show you a couple while I'm cleaning them, just to kind of give you some tips. Especially with like these guild mushrooms, there's a lot of little things that sometimes get stuck here in the gills. So just kind of under running water, just work that debris out with your thumbnail or a knife or whatever, and eventually using the running water will loosen this stuff up, and the water should wash most of anything on here away. So yeah, that's usually going to be the most difficult to clean part, is the gills, but use the water pressure and the weight of the water dropping down out of the faucet to try and blast as much of that debris out of there as possible. And if the water's not doing it alone, then like I said, just kind of use your thumbnail or a knife to give a little bit of a hand. As for the stalk, I just do this. I just kind of pinch it between my thumb and my pointer finger and stuff, and I just kind of use my thumb to wipe anything off that I see. Same thing goes with the cap. Just kind of use your finger to get anything off the top there that's visible. If there's anything down in like little crevices, if the mushroom that you're eating has these little crevices, then just, like get down in there and try to get as much off as you can. But at the end of the day, you're going to eat a couple pieces of dirt here or there. So don't freak out too much if it's not 100% clean. You'll be okay. And we'll just do the same thing with this one right here. I missed a little bit of dirt on the end, so if there's any residual dirt on the end, I recommend just cutting that piece off. It's just easier to cut them off, especially ones that grow in the ground, because that dirt can be really, really intertwined in the mushroom flesh itself. That looks pretty good. So yeah, that's basically all you have to do. Chanterelles, same exact thing. Chanterelles are actually pretty easy to clean, because since they have ridges instead of gills, the underside doesn't trap a whole lot of debris. And usually they grow in an area that's relatively clean too. Like chanterelles seem to enjoy growing in almost like open areas, like a grassy patch out in the woods or a field or whatever. So they don't typically grow out of like leaves and stuff, and don't tend to trap a whole lot of debris. But still, you should clean them just to make sure that you're not eating. Well, just make sure that you're eating as little dirt as possible. Now, this is obviously a lot easier with 2 hands, but I wanted to show you how I clean some mushrooms, so just doing a quick couple washings here of these guys on camera, and then I'll after I'm done showing you, I'll clean them, the other ones, with both hands, and it'll be a little more meticulous and a little easier to do, but that's fine. Okay, that one looks pretty good. Maybe there's one little speck right here. So let me show you. If you got a stubborn little speck of dirt, just take a knife, just scrape it out. There. Oh, that's just a hole. Okay. So yeah, that one's good. Alright, so let's do a black trumpet now. Black trumpets, since you don't have to worry about gills, this whole underside right here is smooth, and that is the fertile surface. So, I don't know whether that has anything to do with it, but still. But yeah, since these are conical and they're hollow all the way from the top down to the bottom, you can see that it's pouring water out of the bottom, just like a garden hose or a trumpet would. Just run some water down through there. And here's a good tip whenever you're harvesting black trumpets. Always, even if you pick them without cutting them, before you put them in your mushroom bag, cut off the very bottom of the stalk, because the bottom of the stalk always has a little bit of dirt or something, like, not even a little bit of dirt, a pretty big chunk of dirt and stuff stuck to the bottom, and it will not come off the bottom. Just cut it off. And that way, if you put these in the mushroom bag with the bottom cut off, you're not getting that dirt all over your mushrooms in your bag. And that just makes the cleaning step so much easier and so much faster. So yeah, just like we did with the other ones, just kind of blah, 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 rub it, let the water pressure and the weight of the water do most of the cleaning. It's a little harder to see, like if you got all the dirt off of these guys, just because they're so dark, so just use your best judgment. And yeah, that is that. So I'm going to get the rest of these cleaned off, and then we'll go cook some for dinner. How's that sound? So I'll see you here in a little bit. Now that everything is nice and clean, or about as clean as you can get wild mushrooms, it's time to cook them. And like I said earlier in the video, these guys I'm just going to saute up in some butter. And these guys, I'm actually going to dredge in some flour and cornstarch and then just pan fry them like you would a piece of chicken. So I'm going to put these off to the side for now because I don't need to cook them yet. So let me go get a flour dredge set up and just go from there. All right, a very, very simple breading station here. We have the cleaned and ready to go mushrooms. This is just a little bowl with some whole milk and some heavy cream mixed in with the whole milk just to make it a little bit thicker. And I put a little bit of salt in with this whole milk and heavy cream mixture. And here on this plate is a very simple concoction of 1-to-1 ratio of regular all-purpose flour to cornstarch and some salt and pepper just to kind of add a little bit of taste to the actual breading itself. You can use all flour, you can use all cornstarch if you want. I like to use both flour and cornstarch because the flour browns up really nice and it gives you that really good, like Maillard flavor. But the cornstarch will keep nice and crispy and crunchy and it'll give you like a really nice light crisp texture. So all we want to do, let's start with this one since it's already, the cap's already broken, well, the stalk's already broken off. Dip into the milk and in the heavy cream. Roll it in the flour, literally. Might have to sprinkle a little on top to get down that divot. Sprinkle some on the gills, make sure it's completely coated. Shake off as much loose flour as possible. Put it off to the side, and then just keep repeating. I know you should have like a dry hand and a wet hand whenever you're doing stuff like this, but whatever. I don't care. It's fine. You don't have to do this part either. You can just saute these up in regular, just butter like we are with the other ones, or you can do anything you want with them. This is just how I prefer to do these. But yeah, you do whatever you want, but this is just a starting point. And whenever you are dredging these in your milk or whatever, make sure that you immediately dunk it in here so that you get a nice coating of flour, and the milk and stuff that's stuck to the mushroom itself creates almost like a batter underneath the flour layer. You know, mixes with the milk and creates like a nice batter, and that'll make everything stick really well. Now, let me cut these off real quick. Now, obviously, we're eating the stalks of these guys, and generally speaking, if a mushroom is a safe wild edible mushroom, you can usually eat the cap and the stalk, but sometimes the stalk is like very woody or not a very good texture wise, so some mushrooms it's not really worth eating the stalk. Some mushrooms you just want to eat the cap, and some mushrooms kind of like king boletes, sometimes they're all stalk, so that's the only part that is worth eating. Generally speaking, if the mushroom is edible, you can usually eat the stalk or the cap, well, the stalk and the cap. Just depends on the mushroom species and your preference. So that's why we're cooking these up along with the caps. I'm suffering from club hand. That's fine. If you make a mess while you cook, remember, it's okay to make a mess as long as you clean it up afterwards, right? Right. At least that's what I tell myself. As far as the dredge part in flour like we're doing here, you can also add any spice or anything that you want in here. This would probably be really good with some garlic powder, some onion powder, maybe some cumin. Try some cumin, that'd probably be really good. Yeah, just whatever your preference is. If you like wild mushrooms and you like to cook, they are so versatile in their potential roles in the kitchen. Make it yours. Make the recipe yours. That's all of them done. I'm going to go clean off my hands and I'm going to get things ready. All right, I have a couple pans here ready. We're going to be doing the sauteing for the chanterelles and stuff in this flat bottom wok, and for the pan frying of the milk mushrooms, we're just going to be using this nice little non-stick pan. Both of them we'll put on medium heat. I guess we'll put the stir-fry one on them. Maybe medium-high heat. That way it browns a little bit better in the pan. But for the ones that we're pan frying, we are just going to want this on medium heat. So there we go. Let these heat up, and then I'm going to put butter into this one. No, I'm going to put butter into this one, and I'm going to put some cooking oil into this one. So be back whenever they're warm. Alrighty, this one is ready, so I'm going to put a decent amount of butter because we have a lot of mushrooms that we're cooking in here. Swirl that around. And this one's getting warm too. And I just realized we don't have any regular vegetable oil, so I'm going to have to use light olive oil, which is fine. Just put enough on the bottom to coat the bottom. You don't need to absolutely cover the mushrooms that you're cooking whenever you're pan frying something. Okay. Let that melt and get ready. That. And then once your butter is fully melted, you can see that it's foaming up quite a bit because all the water in the butter is starting to boil off. There we go. Butter is melted. Let me go get the mushrooms. Now, we're just going to bloop, flop them in. And we're just going to cook on medium-high heat for these guys. Every so often, you want to make sure that you agitate them, just to make sure that they get cooked evenly, but we'll come back to that while they're cooking. But you do want to make sure that any wild mushroom you are going to consume, you want to make sure that it's cooked very thoroughly. There's only a couple wild mushrooms that are entirely safe to eat raw. So whenever you're ingesting mushrooms like these, you want to make sure that you cook them through completely. Okay? So these are good. We're just going to let them do their thing. The oil is getting there. I think it might need a little more time. Yeah, we're going to give that another minute to heat up. And yeah, you can see that whenever you first put these mushrooms in, a lot of water is going to start coming out of them. So don't be alarmed. Just let the water boil off. It'll evaporate, and then once a lot of the water has gone away, then we can start actually sautéing these to the point that we want them. So we'll just give it a little shake. And then just put it back down and let it keep doing its thing. Alright, so I think our oil is good. So now we can put some of our milk mushrooms in. I always start gill side down. So just do that. Yeah, that one broke. Not a big deal. Make sure that once you're pan frying them, that everything is as flat down as possible. And now we're just going to let these cook for a few minutes on this side, a few minutes on that side. Flip them, let them cook for a few minutes on that side, a few minutes on that. Yeah, and then we're just gonna go from there and see how their doneness factor is. And once we've determined that these are good to go, then we'll pull them from the heat. But let's go over to these guys. You can see that they're starting to cook down a little bit, starting to wilt down, which is what we want. It's going to happen. Mushrooms cook down a lot whenever you apply heat to them. Don't be alarmed. Totally to be expected. So now, I'm actually going to bump the heat up just a little bit on these guys since so much water came off of them. Sometimes mushrooms have a lot of water and sometimes they don't, so you just kind of have to adjust the heat accordingly to what you think. So yeah, let these saute and we'll just kind of come back to them whenever things have been cooking for a little bit. Alrighty, let's give these guys a stir. You can see a lot of the moisture is starting to come off, so that's good. Give them a stir. Make sure that this one is flipped. And I'll try to get as evenly cooked as possible on all edges and all sides of the mushrooms. So just make sure that you try and have every part of it come in contact with the pan for a little while. That's good. I'm actually going to turn the heat back down now that a lot of the moisture has been boiled out of these. I'm going to let that cook for a little lower temperature now. And these guys, I think they're ready to flip. So let's give the stalks a turn, like that. Give this piece of cap that broke off a turn. Flip that. Oh yeah, it's starting to get golden. There. Alright, so now that we flipped those ones, we're going to let them cook for a couple minutes on that side, and then I'll probably flip them one more time just to make sure that they're cooked thoroughly. This one right here is going to be done fast, well, faster than these ones will, and as will the stalks. I have one of the stalks underneath this cap. Actually, there we go. The stalks, since they're a little bit smaller, they're going to cook faster than these ones. And the caps, but that's fine. Like, just take them off as they're done, as needed. No big deal. Go over here. Oh, yeah, that's looking really nice. Give them a little toss. Oh, these smell awesome. There we go. Yeah, it's starting to look really good. You can see that the black trumpets just stain everything black. That's okay. So now, since these have cooked down a considerable amount, I'm going to kind of flatten these out and just let them cook in one layer. I don't really want any mushrooms sitting on top of other mushrooms. So there we go. And I think I'm just going to do salt and pepper with it. And I'll just let that do its thing and come back to it here in a couple minutes. These smell great. All of them smell awesome, but these ones especially smell amazing. These look really, really good. Nice and brown. Everything looks to be cooked very nicely. So I just turned the heat off of these guys, so they are done. Let me check these guys out. Oh yeah, they're looking nice too. Alright, I'm going to flip these caps once more. And just let them cook for another minute or so on that side. The stalks are probably about done. Starting to get nice and brown. Cool. Okay. Let them cook for another minute. Take them off the heat and wrap up the video. I'll cook this last one here after I'm done with this part. And we're done. I still have that one frying in the background there. You could probably hear that popping and sizzling, but that's fine. And here we have our delicious chanterelles, black trumpets, and lactoflus hygrophorites. And over here we have our flour dredged and pan fried lactoflus volumus milk mushrooms. Now you can just eat these as is. I just put a little bit of pepper on these, some salt, and I'm actually going to be fancy and put some of my finishing salt on here, just because it tastes really good. You can dip these in something if you want. I'm just going to eat them right like this. And these guys I'm just going to eat just as is, just as a meal. Yeah, as you can see, these really cook down quite a bit from the amount that we started with. That's to be expected with mushrooms. They are like 90% water after all. Most, you know, give or take. But yeah, these guys here, you just go ahead and do whatever you want. You can dip them in whatever you want. You can make a sandwich out of them. Like I said, the most important thing to remember when cooking wild mushrooms is 1, be positive of the identification of the mushroom that you're eating, and 2, make sure they are thoroughly cooked through, okay? I think that we are good to go. I'm going to take a bite of this milk mushroom stock. Oh, so good. Highly recommended. One thing that should be noted, if you have a latex allergy, you cannot eat milk mushrooms. I just wanted to give that little disclaimer. Okay? Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you try any of these. Happy hunting, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I just remembered, as I'm sitting here eating wild mushrooms, it should probably be noted that if you're not used to eating wild mushrooms, you only want to try a little bit at a time to make sure that they settle okay in your stomach. Some people have adverse reactions to certain species of wild mushrooms. I've been eating them since I could literally eat solid food, and I've never really had a problem with any of them, but you just want to start in small amounts your first time trying a specific species of mushroom, just as an FYI.